Song engineers built fire spears, bamboo tubes packed with gunpowder that belched sustained flame at enemies in close combat. For the first time, a man could carry fire as a weapon. Then came the bomb, gunpowder sealed in clay or iron, hurled by catapult, detonating on impact. The psychological effect on defenders was, by all accounts, devastating. Fire drug had become history's deadliest tool. In 2 centuries, a Taoist accident had become the dominant technology of warfare. The Song dynasty's enemies faced weapons no cavalry charge or siege ladder could answer. When the Mongols conquered China in the 13th century, they learned as they went. They hired Chinese engineers and carried gunpowder westward across the known world. By approximately 1240, Arab military engineers had working gunpowder formulas. Manuscripts of the period describe mixtures strikingly close to the original. Fire drug was no longer a Chinese secret. Around 1267, the English friar Roger Bacon described gunpowder in his Opus Majus, but encoded the formula in anagram, as though he sensed the knowledge was too dangerous to write plainly. By 1300, European armies had iron cannons. Castle walls that had stood for centuries had a deadline. The armored knight, the moat, the tower, all now negotiable. At some point, historians cannot pin the moment, someone pointed a gunpowder rocket at the sky instead of at an enemy. They watched it burst. They decided this was worth doing. The earliest accounts of aerial fireworks come from Song dynasty China, likely in the 12th or 13th century. Rockets built for war were reclaimed for wonder, the same fire, aimed at stars. When fireworks reached Renaissance Italy, the Italians made it an art form. City-states hosted elaborate Giochi di Fuoco, games of fire, at weddings and feast days. Spectacle was political power. A new profession emerged, the pyrotechnist, part chemist, part performer. These specialists guarded their formulas across generations, worked for nobles and popes, and were among the most sought-after craftspeople in Europe. In 1533, Catherine de' Medici married Henry II of France and brought Italian fireworks culture north to Paris. The French court was astonished. The fashion spread through Europe within a generation. Queen Elizabeth I loved fireworks so deeply that she created an official court title, Fire Master of England. At royal entertainments on the Thames, rockets lit the night while the Queen watched from the riverbank. By the 17th century, fireworks were the default spectacle of European statecraft. Peace treaties, coronations, royal births, all marked with fire in the sky. The weapon of war had become theater. Here is the remarkable part. For most of these centuries, nobody could explain why fireworks worked. Pyrotechnists achieved their effects through trial and guarded trade secret. The science came much later. Gunpowder works because saltpeter, potassium nitrate, is an oxidizer. When it reacts with charcoal and sulfur, enormous gas volumes release in milliseconds. That sudden expansion is the bang. Color comes from metal salts at extreme temperature. Strontium burns red, barium burns green, sodium burns yellow, copper burns blue, each a specific atom releasing a specific wavelength of visible light. Blue is the hardest color in pyrotechnics. Copper compounds that produce blue flame destabilize at high temperatures. Achieving reliable, vivid blue took chemists well into the 20th century. It remains the hardest effect to execute. Today's aerial firework is a cardboard sphere with 3 components: a lifting charge, a time delay fuse, and a bursting charge surrounded by small compressed pellets called stars, each a mix of metal salts and oxidizer. At altitude, the bursting charge fires. Stars scatter outward in a sphere and ignite simultaneously. That perfect circle expanding in the sky is geometry and chemistry executing together in under 1 second. By the mid-1700s, fireworks were embedded in European royal ceremony. British colonists in America had grown up watching displays at coronations and celebrations. They knew what fire in the sky meant. On July 3, 1776, John Adams wrote to his wife Abigail. The Continental Congress had just passed independence. He was already imagining how the day should be marked forever. Adams wrote that independence deserved, and these are his words, bonfires and illuminations from one end of this continent to the other from this time forward forevermore. He meant fireworks. He knew it. On July 4, 1777, the first anniversary of independence, Philadelphia marked the occasion with a cannon salute and a fireworks display. The war was still being fought. The tradition was already sealed. In 1814, British forces bombarded Fort McHenry in Baltimore using Congreve rockets, military weapons descended directly from Chinese gunpowder. A lawyer named Francis Scott Key watched from a ship in the harbor. Key wrote, "The rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air." He was describing real ordnance over a real fort. Those words became the national anthem. Fireworks imagery is built into America at the deepest level. In America, families like the Gruchus of Long Island built pyrotechnic dynasties tracing to 19th century Italy. They have produced displays for presidential inaugurations and Olympic ceremonies. The craft is still passed hand to hand. China manufactures roughly 90% of the world's fireworks. The country that accidentally invented gunpowder in a 9th century monastery still dominates global supply more than 14 centuries later. The global fireworks industry is worth several $billions. The United States alone imports, by some estimates, over $250 million in fireworks each year. The core chemistry of a firework hasn't changed in 1,000 years. Potassium nitrate, charcoal, sulfur. The same three substances that scorched that monk's hands are at the center of every burst you've ever seen. The alchemist wanted to live forever. He never found the elixir. But his accident produced a spectacle so universal it crosses every culture and every century without any need for translation. Fire has always meant something to human beings: danger, warmth, the divine. Fireworks take that ancient instinct and make it beautiful. They are controlled danger. The closest thing we have to holding lightning. 1,400 years from a scorched workshop in Tang, China, to a firework bursting over a stadium tonight. Same ingredients, same combustion, same involuntary gasp from the crowd looking up. Every firework gives you about 3 seconds of complete attention. No phone, no past, no future. Just light and sound. 14 centuries of history compressed into one moment of awe. One alchemist, 3 ingredients, 1 accident, 1,400 years. And tonight overhead, the same answer as always: fire in the sky. This is Origins. Subscribe and come back tomorrow. There's a new origin every single morning.